"Mom, from now on, the cooking and laundry are all on you." I was sitting in the sunroom, sipping a cup of Earl Grey, enjoying the first morning of my retirement without having to rush off to work. Sunlight streamed through the sheer curtains, landing on my teacup and making the amber liquid glow. At 62 years old, after a 38-year career as a teacher, I thought I could finally take a breath. Suddenly, a greasy dish rag flew through the air and landed in my lap, staining my favorite beige cardigan. "Besides, you're retired now," my daughter-in-law, Jessica, announced, standing in the middle of the living room with her hands on her hips. Her chemically curled hair was pulled back into a high, tight ponytail. "You're just sitting around the house doing nothing anyway. You cannot just live here for free." I slowly set down my teacup, my fingers trembling slightly. The rag smelled of acrid grease, probably from just wiping down the kitchen stovetop. "Jess, what kind of way is that to talk to my mom?" "My son, Daniel," said as he walked out of the bedroom, his suit crisp and his tie perfectly knotted. A flicker of warmth sparked in my chest, but it was extinguished just as quickly when he continued, "Mom's getting older, you have to be a little more delicate." He walked over and stood before me, looking down at me with that familiar, impatient smile. "Mom, your Social Security check is only so much, and with the cost of living these days, Jessica and I are under a lot of pressure. It's only right that you help out with the chores around the house, don't you think?" I looked up at the son I had raised. When he had a fever as a child, I stayed up with him for 3 days and 3 nights straight. When he went to college, I scrimped and saved to buy him a laptop. When he got married, I gave him my entire life savings for the down payment on this house. And now, he stood before me, his eyes as cold and indifferent as if he were looking at a stranger renting a room. "I understand," I said softly. I placed the dish rag on the table, stood up, and brushed off my cardigan. "You two go on to work. I'll take care of things here." Jessica let out a triumphant little hum and walked out, grabbing her purse on the way. Daniel hurried after her, but paused at the door to add, "Mom, remember to mop the floors too. Jessica likes things really clean." The sound of the door clicking shut echoed in the empty living room. I stood there, looking around the house I had lived in for 2 years, which was really just a small bedroom they had granted me. On the wall still hung a family portrait I'd brought with me. In the photo, Daniel was just an elementary school kid, his arms wrapped around my neck, grinning from ear to ear. I walked into the kitchen. The sink was piled high with dirty breakfast dishes, the stovetop was splattered with grease, and the trash can was overflowing. I rolled up my sleeves and started washing the dishes. As the water ran from the faucet, my tears started to fall, hot and silent. Before I retired, I'd always helped with cooking and cleaning after getting home from work. Even though Jessica constantly criticized my food for being too salty or too bland, or complained that I hadn't mopped the floors well enough. But I never imagined that on the very first day of my retirement, they would so blatantly treat me like an unpaid maid. After washing the dishes, I did not mop the floor. I went back to my small room and pulled a suitcase out from under the bed. It was an old suitcase, one my husband Arthur and I had bought on a trip to Florida years ago. He's been gone for 5 years now. I wonder how much his heart would ache if he could see this. I slowly packed my things: clothes, photo albums, a few of my favorite books, the watch Arthur had left me. I did not have much. It all fit into one suitcase. Finally, I took an envelope from under my pillow. Inside was the cash from my pension checks that I had been secretly setting aside for months. It was not a lot, but it was enough to get me settled somewhere for a little while. I left a note on the dining table. "I'm going to find my own worth. Don't worry about me." Then I dragged my suitcase and walked out of that place they called home. At the entrance of the subdivision, I hailed a cab. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked cheerfully. I froze for a second. Where to? After Arthur died, I sold our old house and moved in with my son. Now I had nowhere to go, just. "Take me downtown," I said. Through the car window, familiar sights passed by. The elementary school where I had taught, the farmer's market I frequented, the old coffee shop Arthur had loved. This city held the memories of most of my life, yet now I felt like a homeless wanderer. I checked into a hotel downtown. The room was small but clean, After setting down my suitcase, I sat by the window, watching the bustling crowds below. A sudden sense of relief washed over me. From a hidden compartment in my suitcase, I pulled out a large manila envelope. Inside was a collection of documents: property deeds, stock certificates, bank statements. I looked through them one by one, my fingers tracing over the numbers and official seals. Before Arthur passed, he had held my hand and said, "Eleanor, never put all your eggs in one basket. Daniel is a good son, but people change. You have to have something for yourself, a safety net." At the time, I thought he was just being anxious because of his illness. Daniel was the boy I raised. He had always been so considerate and obedient. How could he ever be anything but loyal? But now, I understood my husband's wisdom. These documents proved that I owned a 2-bedroom condo in the Southgate neighborhood, which I had bought 5 years ago with the money from Arthur's life insurance. It was currently being rented out. I also owned a small commercial space on the outskirts of town, leased to a convenience store. And I had several stable mutual funds that provided a steady monthly income. All told, it was more than enough for me to live a comfortable life in my later years, without ever needing to depend on my son's charity. I picked up my phone and dialed the number of an old friend. "Hello, Brenda? It's me, Eleanor." My voice was surprisingly calm. "I've moved out." "Yes, from Daniel's house." No, it was not an impulsive decision. I should have listened to Arthur a long time ago. Brenda was my husband's former colleague, and now worked at a law firm. After hearing what had happened that morning, she cursed into the phone. "Those ungrateful brats." "Eleanor, don't you worry. I'll help you sort out the housing situation right now. The lease on your Southgate condo is up next week. You can move right in." "Thank you, Brenda," I said softly. "Just don't tell Daniel yet. I want them to sweat a little." After hanging up, I took a long, hot shower and changed into a fresh set of clothes. Looking in the mirror, I saw a woman I barely recognized. There was a resolve in her eyes I had not seen in a very long time. I was 62 years old. Perhaps my life was just beginning. That evening, I went down to the hotel restaurant for dinner. I had just ordered when my phone rang. It was Daniel. "Mom, where did you go?" His voice was tinged with an uncharacteristic urgency. "Why is the house so clean? What did you mean by that note?" I slowly cut into the steak on my plate, my voice even. "I'm staying somewhere else for a few days. You two will have to take care of yourselves." "Mom, stop being dramatic," Daniel's voice rose. "Jessica came home, saw how clean the kitchen was, and thought you were throwing a tantrum. Just come back, okay? You don't have to do all the housework." "How about that?" I could almost picture his expression on the other end of the line, not worried, but annoyed. Annoyed at my nerve, annoyed that he might actually have to cook his own dinner and wash his own dishes. "Daniel," I said, putting down my knife and fork. "I am 62 years old. I raised you for 35 years. I put you through college and helped you buy your house. I am not your unpaid maid." "Mom, what are you talking about?" he said, flustered. "We just asked you to help out a little. Is it really necessary to make such a big deal out of it? Where are you? I'll come pick you up." "That will not be necessary." I hung up the phone and turned it off. The steak was delicious. I savored every bite and then ordered a slice of tiramisu for dessert. As it arrived, a family counseling show was playing on the restaurant's television. I watched the mother and son arguing on the screen and suddenly smiled. Tomorrow, I would go see my empty condo. It was time to start a brand new life. Right now, Daniel and Jessica were probably realizing I was not joking, that I had truly left. I wondered what they would do for dinner. There was still some of the casserole I made yesterday in the fridge, but would they know how to heat it up? I shook my head, pushing aside the pointless worry. From now on, I had to learn to think of myself first, just as Arthur had told me to. The hotel bed was comfortable, and for the first time in a long time, I slept soundly. There was no waking up in the middle of the night to heat up a late meal for my son. No being jolted awake at dawn by the sound of my daughter-in-law's high heels. I slept until morning. A sliver of sunlight pierced through the gap in the curtains, heralding the start of my new day. The hotel's white ceiling and soft mattress were a stark reminder that I had left the home where I was treated like a servant. My phone showed 7 missed calls, all from Daniel. There were also 3 text messages. Mom, stop this. Come home. Jessica is really angry. You're making things very difficult for us. Where are you? I did not reply. Instead, I called Brenda. Eleanor, are you okay? Brenda's voice was full of concern. I'm wonderful, I said, pulling open the curtains and letting the sunlight flood the room. Brenda, I'd like to go see my condo. I was just about to call you about that, Brenda said quickly. I got in touch with the tenants. They've agreed to move out 3 days early. You can go over and take a look right now. I have the key. Half an hour later, I met her outside her law office. I had not seen Brenda in 5 years, but she had hardly changed, save for a few fine lines around her eyes and the fact that her short hair was now dyed a fashionable shade of green. She wrapped me in a hug so tight I could barely breathe. Come on, I'll drive you, she said, leading me to her little red sedan. Sunnyvale Gardens was the name of the condominium complex in Southgate where my 2-bedroom unit was located. I had bought it 5 years ago, right after Arthur passed away and Daniel had just gotten married. On a whim, I had followed my late husband's advice and used his life insurance and my savings to buy this place, and I had been renting it out ever since. It's this one, 502, Brenda said, taking out the key and leading me upstairs. When the door opened, a faint scent of lemon cleaner greeted us. The tenants, a young couple, had kept the place immaculate. The walls were a soft beige, the floors a light-colored wood. Sunlight poured in through the sliding glass doors, making the whole apartment feel bright and warm. They just moved out this morning and had a cleaning service come through, Brenda said. They left the furniture, so you can move right in. I slowly walked into this unfamiliar home, my fingers brushing across the smooth dining table and the brand-new sofa. The master bedroom had a queen-sized bed, and the second bedroom had been converted into a home office. The kitchen was fully equipped. The balcony overlooked the complex's central garden, offering a wide, open view. Do you like it? Brenda asked, leaning against the doorframe. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. This place was more than twice the size of my small room at Daniel's house. It was filled with light, and it was all mine. The rent has been deposited into your account on time every month, Brenda said, pulling a folder from her briefcase. After property taxes and management fees, you've been clearing about $1,500 a month. Here are the financial statements for the past 5 years. I took the folder but did not open it. Brenda was my husband's most trusted colleague, and now she was the only friend I could truly rely on. There's no need. I trust you, I said, looking around. I'm moving in today. So soon? Brenda raised an eyebrow. Aren't you going to wait for Daniel to come crawling back with an apology? He won't, I said with a bitter smile. In his eyes, I'm just a stubborn old woman throwing a tantrum. Brenda sighed and pulled out her phone. All right, I'll call a moving company for you. There's no need for that. It's just one suitcase, I said, shaking my head. Nothing else matters. Brenda drove me back to the hotel to get my luggage. On the way, she asked suddenly, Eleanor, when are you going to tell Daniel the truth? What truth? The truth that you have your own property and savings, that you don't need to depend on him, Brenda said, tapping the steering wheel. That boy probably thinks you're penniless and that you'll come crawling back to him in a few days. I watched the streetlights blur past the window and did not answer. She was right. Daniel had probably never imagined that his compliant, hard-working mother actually had more than enough to live independently. Back at the hotel, I packed my single bag and checked out at the front desk. Just as I was about to leave, my phone rang again. This time, it was an unknown number. Hello? I answered hesitantly. Mom? It was Daniel's voice, thick with anger. Why haven't you been answering my calls? Do you have any idea how worried Jessica and I have been? I'm fine. You don't need to worry, I said calmly. Where are you? I'm coming to get you now, he said, his tone demanding, like he was ordering around a disobedient child. That's not necessary, I said, glancing at Brenda beside me. I'm staying with a friend for a few days. What friend? You have other friends in this city? Daniel's voice was full of suspicion. Mom, stop this nonsense and come home. Jessica said, if you come back, you can do less housework. I closed my eyes, a tightness in my chest. In his mind, did I not even have the right to have friends of my own? Daniel, I interrupted. I am 62 years old, and I have a right to my own life. You and Jessica just take care of yourselves. Mom? You? I hung up and turned off my phone. Brenda looked at me with concern. Are you okay? I'm fine. I managed a weak smile. Let's go. Let's go home. The word home, coming from my own lips, felt strangely foreign. For 38 years, my home had always shifted according to the needs of my husband and son, from a school dormitory to company-provided housing, and finally to that small room in Daniel's house. And now, at last, I had a space that was entirely my own. The property manager at Sunnyvale Gardens was a pleasant, middle-aged man. When he learned I was the owner, he warmly helped me with the move-in paperwork. Brenda helped me buy some groceries and daily necessities, staying until evening. Call me any time, she said before she left. And don't go soft on him. Let that boy learn a lesson. After she left, I stood in the empty living room, a feeling of unreality washing over me. Yesterday at this time, I was washing dishes in Daniel's kitchen. Now, I had a fresh start. I opened my suitcase and hung my few items of clothing in the closet. At the bottom was an old photo album filled with pictures of Daniel from childhood to adulthood. I gently caressed the yellowed photos, and memories flooded back. His first steps, his first day of school, his college graduation. Back then, his eyes were still filled with love and gratitude for his mother. The last page of the album held a family portrait taken a month before Arthur died. He was painfully thin in the photo but insisted on standing, one arm around my shoulder, the other on Daniel's. He looked directly at the camera, as if to say, "Take care of yourself, Eleanor." I carefully took the photo out and placed it on the nightstand. Then, from the hidden compartment of my suitcase, I took out the manila envelope and spread the documents on the bed. The property deed clearly had my name on it, dated 3 months after Arthur's passing. 3 mutual fund contracts totaling over $680,000 with steady monthly returns, and a commercial lease agreement with an annual rent of $48,000. Combined with my pension, my fixed monthly income was close to $15,000, more than 3 times what Daniel thought I had. I let out a long breath and locked the documents in the desk drawer in the office. Arthur was right. You always have to have a safety net. That night, I cooked a simple bowl of soup for myself and sat by the sliding glass door to eat. The city lights began to sparkle, and the traffic flowed like a river of light. My phone remained off. I did not want Daniel's calls to disturb this rare moment of peace. After a shower, I lay down in the unfamiliar but comfortable bed, tossing and turning. My mind was filled with images of Daniel as a child. The nights I stayed up with him when he had a fever, the evenings I helped him study for exams, the money I saved from my own expenses each month when he was in college. Suddenly, my phone vibrated, startling me. I had forgotten to turn it off completely, only putting it on silent. A text from Daniel appeared on the screen. "Mom, Jessica is pregnant. Are you really going to let your grandchild be born without a grandmother?" I stared at the message, my fingers trembling slightly. Pregnant? What a coincidence. The day after I left, I did not reply. Instead, I called Brenda. "Brenda, can you check on something for me?" The morning sun streamed into the bedroom. I opened my eyes, disoriented for a moment by the unfamiliar room, the comfortable bed, and the complete freedom of my time. I stretched, then slowly got out of bed. In the kitchen, I made myself a cup of coffee and 2 slices of toast. Sitting on the balcony, I watched the elderly neighbors doing their morning exercises and the younger residents walking their dogs. A long-forgotten sense of freedom washed over me. My phone had 3 unread messages, all from Daniel. "Mom, Jessica is really pregnant. It's been 2 months. If you don't believe me, here's the report from the doctor. Don't you want to meet your grandchild?" I clicked on the image. It was a blurry ultrasound photo. I could faintly make out the words "early intrauterine pregnancy." The date was from yesterday, the very day I had left. What a coincidence. I put down my phone and took a sip of coffee. The bitter liquid cleared my head. If Jessica were really pregnant, why would she have been screaming at me yesterday morning, throwing a dish rag, and demanding I do chores? Aren't pregnant women supposed to avoid stress? The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Brenda standing outside, holding a bag of breakfast. "Morning," she said, bustling in and placing a container of oatmeal and a pastry on the table. "Figured you wouldn't have eaten properly." "What brings you here?" I asked, taking the warm oatmeal. "Two things," Brenda said, pulling a folder from her bag. "First, I checked Jessica's medical records. She did go to the women's health clinic yesterday, but the diagnosis was an irregular period. She's not pregnant at all." My hand shook, spilling some oatmeal on the table. Even though I had suspected it, the truth still sent a chill through my heart. They had fabricated a pregnancy just to trick me into coming back to be their maid. "Second thing," Brenda said, handing me a business card. "I've made an appointment for you with a lawyer for 3 o'clock this afternoon. There are some details about Arthur's estate that need to be confirmed." "His estate? I thought that was all taken care of," I said, confused. Brenda's expression suddenly became complicated. "Eleanor, there were some things Arthur didn't tell you before he passed. This lawyer will explain everything." A knot formed in my stomach. My husband had been a mid-level manager at a bank. He made a good living, but we were not wealthy. Besides this condo and our savings, what other estate could there be? After Brenda left, I cleaned up and decided to go for a walk to explore the neighborhood. Just as I was putting on my shoes, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was the young man from property management, holding a large bouquet of flowers. "Miss Vance, this was just delivered for you." I took the bouquet. Tucked inside was a card. "Mom, we're sorry. We were wrong. Please give us a chance to make it up to you. Daniel and Jessica." The flowers were lilies and carnations, my favorites when I was younger. I was a little surprised Daniel remembered. But Jessica's signature on the card was sloppy and crooked, clearly written by Daniel himself. I placed the flowers on the coffee table without looking for a vase. Before heading out, I hesitated, then grabbed my phone and turned it off. The area around the condo complex was well equipped, with a supermarket, a farmer's market, and a pharmacy all within walking distance. I sat down at a small coffee shop and ordered a latte. Two young women at the next table were chatting. "My mother-in-law is always telling me what to do, it's so annoying." "I know, right? Older people should just stay out of it and let young people live their lives." I shook my head with a bitter smile. In Daniel and Jessica's eyes, I was probably that meddling mother-in-law. But in reality, for the past 2 years, I had never even entered their bedroom without an invitation, terrified of being accused of prying. Halfway through my coffee, my phone vibrated. It was a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Vance, this is Kevin, Daniel's colleague. Daniel didn't come to work today. He said he's looking for you. He's very worried. Could you please give him a call?" I sighed and turned my phone on. Immediately, a dozen notifications for missed calls and texts flooded in. I scanned a few. "Mom, where are you? I'm really worried. Mom, Jessica knows she was wrong. She's willing to apologize. Mom, I've called the police." "Called the police?" My heart skipped a beat. Though I knew it was just a threat, if this really escalated to involving the authorities, it would be bad for everyone. I dialed Daniel's number. "Mom?" He answered instantly, his voice sounding on the verge of tears. "Where are you? I've been looking for you all day." "I'm fine. I'm staying at a friend's house," I said calmly. "Which friend? Give me the address. I'll come get you," he said urgently. "That's not necessary. I need some time to myself." "Mom?" His voice suddenly rose. "Have you been scammed by someone? Your pension is so small. Where could you afford to stay? Was it that Brenda who put you up to this? She never liked me." I closed my eyes, the tightness returning to my chest. In his mind, I was just a clueless old woman with no judgment, liable to be scammed out of my meager pension at any moment. "Daniel," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "I am 62 years old. I am capable of deciding where I go. You and Jessica just take care of yourselves." "Mom, you can't do this," he was practically shouting now. "I'm your son, your only family. How can you just abandon me?" "Abandon you?" I laughed bitterly. "Daniel, you and Jessica were the ones who started treating me like a maid." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then Jessica's sharp voice came through. "Mom, it was my fault. I'm young and foolish. Please don't hold it against me. Please come back." Daniel and I can't live without you." This sudden apology stunned me. Jessica had always been so arrogant. I had never heard her speak so humbly. "Is Jessica really pregnant?" I asked softly. "Of course it's true," she said eagerly. "I was just so excited after the checkup yesterday, I wasn't thinking straight. Mom, you're going to be a grandmother. Please come home." I gripped the phone, remembering the real diagnosis Brenda had found. They were still lying. "I need to think about it," I said, then hung up and turned off my phone again. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I arrived at the law firm Brenda had recommended. The lawyer who met me, a Mr. Peterson, was in his 50s, with gold-rimmed glasses and a calm, deliberate way of speaking. "Mrs. Vance," he said, adjusting his glasses, "regarding the estate of your late husband, Mr. Arthur Vance, there are some details you need to be aware of." He took a document from a file. "This is a trust fund Mr. Vance established before his passing. The beneficiaries are you and your son, Daniel. However, there is a special clause. If Daniel is found to be unfilial or neglectful towards you, you have the right to revoke his beneficiary status." I took the document, stunned. A trust fund? Arthur had never mentioned it. "How much is in this fund?" My voice trembled. "Its current value is approximately $500,000, Mr. Peterson said. "It generates about $2,000 in monthly income, which should be directly deposited into your account. But strangely, it appears you've never touched this money in the past 5 years." I felt like I had been struck by lightning. $500,000? $2,000 a month? I had never received a penny. That's impossible. I scanned the document and suddenly noticed a detail. The receiving account number. It was not my bank account. Mr. Peterson leaned in. "You're right, it's not. This was a temporary account designated by Mr. Vance. It was supposed to have been transferred to your name 5 years ago." My fingers started to shake. After Arthur died, Daniel handled all the financial paperwork. He had said he wanted to help me with all the complicated matters, and I, trusting him completely, gave him power of attorney. "Mr. Peterson," my voice was hoarse, "can you check who the current holder of this account is?" "Of course, but I'll need your authorization." I immediately signed the form. "Mr. Peterson made a call to the bank. 10 minutes later, he had an answer. "The current user of the account is—" He hesitated for a moment. "Daniel Vance." I collapsed into the chair, the world going dark around me. So that was it. Daniel had been secretly pocketing the $500,000 trust fund my husband left for me, all while letting me believe we were struggling, forcing me to rely on his charity. "Mrs. Vance, are you all right?" Mr. Peterson asked with concern. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "Mr. Peterson, I want to sue Daniel Vance and get that money back." "Well," he said, looking uncomfortable, "it is a family matter. I would advise trying to resolve it through mediation first." "Mediation?" I laughed coldly. "He stole his own mother's retirement money, left to her by his father. What is there to mediate?" Leaving the law firm, I stood on the street, the sunlight stinging my eyes. For 5 years, Daniel had been quietly taking $2,000 a month, while I lived on my meager pension, eventually becoming his unpaid maid. I dialed Brenda's number, my voice shaking. "Brenda! Daniel! He stole the $500,000 Arthur left for me." When Brenda burst into my condo, I was sitting on the balcony, staring into space. My husband's trust fund, Daniel's 5 years of deceit, Jessica's fake pregnancy, the information churned in my mind, making it hard to breathe. "Eleanor," Brenda said, pulling me into a hug. "Don't be scared. I'm here." Her light perfume reminded me of when Arthur died. She had held me just like this, promising to take care of me. Who could have imagined the deepest cut would come from the son I trusted most? Brenda carefully reviewed the documents from Mr. Peterson, her expression growing darker. "This Daniel, he looks so innocent, but he's this corrupt. $500,000, and he didn't give you a single cent." "Not only that," I said with a bitter laugh. "He made me think the family was broke, that I had to depend on him to survive." "Let's go," Brenda said, standing up abruptly. "We're going to the bank right now to track where this money went." With Brenda by my side, We went to the bank that managed the trust. After presenting the necessary documents, the manager pulled up the account's transaction history. For the past 5 years, on the 15th of every month, exactly $1,800 had been withdrawn. The signature on the withdrawal slips is Daniel Vance's, the manager said, pointing at the screen. He used the power of attorney you granted him. I trembled. I had signed that document shortly after Arthur's death to facilitate handling the estate. I never imagined Daniel would use it to steal from me. Can you freeze this account? Brenda asked. We'll need a court order for that, the manager said apologetically. Leaving the bank, Brenda immediately contacted a judge she knew. He advised us to first send a formal letter from a lawyer demanding Daniel return the funds. If he refused, we could proceed with legal action. That's too slow, Brenda fumed, stomping her foot. A monster like that should be arrested immediately. Brenda, I said, taking her hand, I want to talk to him first. Talk about what? He's been lying to you for 5 years. I just want to hear what he has to say, I said quietly. After all, he's the son I raised. Brenda sighed heavily and reluctantly agreed. Back home, I turned on my phone and sent Daniel a text. Meet me tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning, at the entrance to the Sunnyvale Gardens complex. Come alone. He replied almost instantly. Mom, you finally answered. Sunnyvale Gardens? You're living there? The rent there is really expensive. I did not answer his question. I just sent back, don't tell Jessica, and turned my phone off. That night, I tossed and turned. My mind filled with images of Daniel through the years. The first time he called me Mama, the smile on his face when he ran home with an award, the words of thanks he gave me at his wedding. These memories clashed with his current betrayal, tearing my heart to pieces. The next morning, I woke early, made a strong cup of tea, and sat on the balcony, waiting. At 9:30, I went downstairs to the entrance of the complex. Daniel was already there, wearing the dark blue shirt I had bought him last year. His eyes lit up when he saw me, and he hurried over. Mom, you live here? He looked me up and down. This place is expensive. Where did you get the money for rent? I'm not renting, I said calmly. This is my condo. Your condo? His eyes widened. Since when do you have a condo? I bought it 5 years ago, with the money from your father's life insurance, I said, staring directly into his eyes. Right after you helped me take care of the trust fund. His face paled instantly, and his eyes darted away. What? What trust fund? Daniel, I said, using his full name. The $500,000 your father left for me. You've been pocketing it for 5 years, taking out nearly $2,000 every month while I scraped by on a meager pension. And now you want to trick me into coming back to be your unpaid maid? His face went from white to red, then to a sickly pale. Mom, listen to me. I can explain. Explain what? My voice shook. Explain how you could stand by and watch your mother pinch every penny while you secretly stole her money. Explain how you had the nerve to work me to the bone without a single word of truth. It was Jessica, he blurted out, grabbing my hand. She forced me. She said we should invest the money to buy a bigger house for our future. Mom, I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I pulled my hand back, looking coldly at the son I was once so proud of. A man in his 30s, and the first thing he does when he's caught is blame someone else. Give me back the money, Daniel, I said, trying to stay calm. All of it. I don't have that much right now, he stammered. Most of it's been invested. I can't get it out right away. Invested? Invested where? In Jessica's cousin's project. His voice grew quieter. It has a 20% annual return. I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. 20% annual return. It was a classic Ponzi scheme. My $500,000 was probably gone, squandered by them. Daniel, I said, fighting back tears, I'm giving you 1 week. Either you return the money, or I'll see you in court. Mom, you can't, he said, panicking. I'm your son. Would you really watch me go to jail? Jail? I laughed coldly. When you were stealing the money, did you ever stop to think you might go to jail? That money was supposed to be mine anyway, he suddenly yelled. Dad left it for me. Why should you get all of it? I'm a beneficiary too. I took a step back, unable to believe my ears. This was the son I had raised with so much love and sacrifice. For money, he could betray his own mother. The trust document is very clear. My voice was ice. You only inherit under the condition that you are a good son to me. As of now, you won't get a single penny. With that, I turned and walked away. Daniel shouted from behind me, "Mom, you'll regret this. Who do you think you are?" "A retired old woman. Without me, you'll get sick and die all alone, and no one will ever know." I did not look back. I just walked straight into my building. The security guard at the front desk looked at me with concern. "Miss Vance, is everything all right?" "Everything's fine." I managed a weak smile. "From now on, please don't let that man in." Back in my apartment, I collapsed onto the sofa, the tears finally breaking through. Brenda was right. Some people are not worth forgiving. The phone rang. It was Mr. Peterson. "Mrs. Vance," his voice was serious. "I've uncovered some new information. Your husband's trust originally stipulated that Daniel could only inherit 30%, and only if he met 3 conditions. First, with your consent. Second, after he was married and financially stable. And third, if he was a filial son to you. And now, 5 years ago, Daniel altered the documents, changing his share to 50% and forging your signature." Mr. Peterson paused. "That constitutes a felony." I gripped the phone, a heavy weight on my chest. Daniel not only stole the money, but he also forged documents. My son. When did he become this person? "Mr. Peterson." I took a deep breath. "I've made my decision. We're filing the lawsuit." After hanging up, I stood by the window, watching the children playing in the garden below. Once upon a time, Daniel was that innocent. What changed him? Was it Jessica's influence? The lure of money? Or was it my own overly doting upbringing? My phone rang again. It was Jessica. I hesitated, then answered. "Mom," she sobbed. "You can't do this to Daniel. He's your only son. How could you bear to see him go to prison?" "Jessica," I said calmly, "when you two were lying to me, did you ever think about this day?" "We were wrong. We really know we were wrong," she choked out. "The money, it's been invested. We can't get it back right now. But we can sign an IOU. We'll pay you back as soon as we make a profit." "What investment? Tell me clearly." It's my cousin's medical project," she stammered. "It's very profitable, 20% a year." I scoffed. "Jessica, you're a college-educated woman. You believe in a scam like that?" There was a pause on the other end, and then Jessica's voice changed. The crying stopped, replaced by a threatening tone. "Mom, don't push us. If this really goes to court, we'll just say the money was a gift from you. You're just an old woman. Who's going to believe you?" I was shaking with rage. "Jessica, I have all the documents, the bank statements." "So what?" she sneered. "It's a family dispute. The most a judge will do is order mediation. But you, who's going to take care of you when you get sick and old? A nursing home?" I hung up and turned off my phone. This couple, one playing the victim, the other making direct threats, a match made in heaven. That evening, Brenda came over with ingredients for lasagna. When I told her what happened, she was so angry she nearly dropped the dish. "That despicable pair," she seethed. "Eleanor, we're going to the courthouse tomorrow. I'll pull some strings. Get this case seen as soon as possible." "Brenda," I said, stirring the sauce. "I'm wondering if I should give them one more chance." "What?" Brenda's eyes widened. "Are you crazy? They stole $500,000 from you. They threatened you." "But he's still my son," my voice cracked. "He was such a good boy when he was little. The first thing he'd do after school was his homework." "Eleanor," Brenda said, grabbing my shoulders. "Wake up. That good little boy is gone. The Daniel that exists now is a complete and utter monster." I lowered my head, tears dripping into the pot. She was right. The son I remembered no longer existed. The Daniel of today had nothing in his eyes but money, without even a shred of basic decency. "Tomorrow," I said, wiping my tears. "We'll go to the courthouse." The hallways of the courthouse were cold and long. I sat on a bench, with Brenda and Mr. Peterson beside me. Today, we were submitting the official complaint against Daniel, demanding the return of the entire trust fund plus 5 years of interest. Nervous? Brenda asked, taking my cold hand. I shook my head, but my eyes kept darting towards the entrance. Would Daniel show up? I had Mr. Peterson notify him of today's proceedings. At precisely 9 o'clock, Daniel and Jessica rushed in. Daniel was in a suit, looking like he was attending a business meeting. Jessica was wearing a loose-fitting dress, her abdomen slightly rounded. This time, it seemed she might actually be pregnant. "Mom," Daniel said, walking over quickly, a fake smile plastered on his face. "Whatever it is, let's talk about it at home. Why do we need to make a scene at the courthouse?" I looked at his hypocritical expression and felt a wave of nausea. This was the son I once would have given my life for, now standing before me like a calculating stranger. "Mr. Vance," Mr. Peterson said, stepping between us. "On behalf of Mrs. Vance, we are formally suing you today for the misappropriation of trust fund assets. Here is a copy of the complaint." Daniel took the papers, his face instantly darkening. "Mom, are you really going to be this cruel?" "You were the one who was cruel first," I said calmly. "Fine, great," he suddenly raised his voice, attracting the attention of people nearby. "My own mother is suing her son. Everyone, come and see this. My wife is pregnant, and she's trying to drive us into the ground." Jessica played her part, cradling her stomach as tears welled up in her eyes. "Grandma, how can you do this? Do you want your grandchild to be born into debt?" I stood up and looked them straight in the eye. "Jessica, just yesterday you were telling me the money was a gift. Today I'm driving you into the ground?" Her tears stopped instantly, her face turning pale. "Daniel," I said, turning to my son, "I'm giving you one last chance. Admit you were wrong and return the money now, and I will drop the lawsuit." "The money's been invested. I can't get it out," he said through gritted teeth. "Mom, if you insist on doing this, then don't blame me for being heartless." "What are you going to do?" Brenda demanded. Daniel sneered and pulled a stack of papers from his briefcase. "This is an itemized bill for my mother's rent, utilities, and food for the 5 years she lived with us. If we're going to settle accounts, let's settle everything." I took the papers, my hands shaking. It was a detailed list of so-called expenses. Rent at $3,000 a month, utilities at $500, food at $2,000, totaling $320,000 over 5 years. You, Brenda, was trembling with rage. "Eleanor worked like a horse in your home, and you have the audacity to charge her for it?" "She did that voluntarily," Daniel said, defiant. "Besides, what mother counts pennies with her own son?" I looked at the boy who once hugged me and said, "Mommy, I love you most in the world, now a cold, calculating animal, and my heart shattered." "Fine," I said, taking a deep breath. "Let's settle everything. For the past 5 years, I cooked 3 meals a day. At the market rate for a personal chef, that's $50 a meal, $150 a day. That comes to over $54,000 a year, or $270,000 for 5 years. I cleaned the house twice a week. At a market rate of $200 per cleaning, that's over $20,000 a year, or $100,000 for 5 years. I did your laundry and ironing. Let's call it $1,000 a month, which is $60,000 for 5 years. I stared into Daniel's shocked eyes. The grand total for my services is $430,000. Subtracting the $320,000 you've calculated, you still owe me $110,000. Add that to the $500,000 from the trust, and you owe me a total of $610,000. Please pay me as soon as possible." Daniel's face turned beet red. This is extortion." "No, this is the market rate," Mr. Peterson said coolly. "Mrs. Vance's calculations are quite reasonable." "Mom," Daniel suddenly dropped to his knees. "I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. The money, I really did invest it in Jessica's cousin's project, and it's all gone. Are you really going to watch your son go bankrupt?" I watched his pathetic performance, my heart dead. Even now, he was still lying. "Mr. Vance," a court clerk emerged. "The judge will see both parties for mediation now." In the mediation room, the judge was a kind-looking, middle-aged woman. She sighed after reviewing our documents. Family disputes are best resolved through negotiation. Mrs. Vance, do you really want to sue your own son? Your Honor, my voice trembled. It's not that I want to sue him, it's that he first stole the retirement money my late husband left for me. That money was half mine anyway, Daniel interjected. Quiet, the judge rapped her gavel. Mr. Vance, you altered a trust document and forged a signature. That is a criminal offense. If Mrs. Vance proceeds with the lawsuit, you could face prison time. Hearing this, Jessica panicked. Your Honor, we're willing to pay it back. We're just a little short on cash right now. Can we do it in installments? Fine, I said immediately. Sign a repayment agreement and use your house as collateral. No, Daniel jumped up. That's our marital home. Then I'll see you in court, I said, standing to leave. Wait. Jessica grabbed my arm. We'll sign. Daniel glared at her, but she stood her ground. We can buy another house, but if you go to jail, what will happen to me and the baby? In the end, under the judge's supervision, Daniel signed a repayment agreement. He admitted to misappropriating the $500,000 trust fund and promised to pay it back within 5 years, using their property as collateral. If he defaulted, I had the right to force the sale of the house. Leaving the courthouse, Daniel's face was ashen. Are you satisfied now, Mom? No, I'm not, I said, looking him in the eye. I would be much more satisfied if my son were an honest man. Spare me the lecture, he sneered. You had this condo all along, but you pretended to be helpless and lived with us. You were just testing me, weren't you? I shook my head and said no more. Some people will never admit their own faults, they just blame others. Back home, I collapsed on the sofa, exhausted. It seemed I had won the legal battle, but my heart felt empty. Using the law against my own son was not something to celebrate. Brenda came to see me that evening with good news. Eleanor, I contacted the lifelong learning program at the community college. They'd like to invite you to teach a calligraphy class. You've always loved it, right? I managed a weak smile. Thanks, but I'm not really in the mood right now. Don't dwell on it, Brenda said, patting my arm. Starting today, you begin a new life. A new life? Yes. At 62, maybe life was just beginning. I no longer had to be anyone's maid, no longer had to walk on eggshells. I could finally live for myself. The next morning, I woke up early, made a cup of tea, and sat on the balcony practicing my calligraphy. The gentle sunlight fell on the paper, and the brush moved with a steady, confident hand. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello, is this Miss Eleanor Vance? A man's voice asked. I'm Mark Evans, the principal at Lincoln Elementary. I heard you've retired, and I'd like to invite you to come and mentor our young teachers. Lincoln Elementary. It was the last school where I had taught. After hanging up, I looked out at the sunshine, a smile forming on my lips. Life, it seemed, would be kind to those who were brave enough to start over. The gates of Lincoln Elementary were just as I remembered. I stood at the entrance, watching the children run and play, feeling like I was in another world. I had only been retired for 2 weeks, but it felt like a lifetime. Mrs. Vance, Principal Evans called, walking over to greet me. I'm so glad you could come. I smiled and shook his hand. Mr. Evans was about 10 years younger than me. I had recommended him for the vice principal position before I retired, and now he was in charge. You look wonderful, he said, leading me towards the main building. How are you adjusting to retired life? It's been fine, I said, glossing over the turmoil of the past few weeks. Mr. Evans, you mentioned you needed me to mentor some young teachers? Yes, he said, opening the door to the conference room. Especially the new teachers in the English department. They lack experience and have trouble with classroom management. It would be a great help if you could come in once a week, observe a few classes, and give them some advice. 7 or 8 young teachers were sitting in the conference room. They all stood and greeted me when I entered. I recognized a few of them as student teachers I had mentored. Mrs. Vance, a young woman with a ponytail, said excitedly, "It's so good to have you back. We've been at our wits' end with our classes lately." I couldn't help but smile. It felt good to be needed again. After the meeting, Mr. Evans pulled me aside. Actually, Mrs. Vance, there's a special class I was hoping you might consider taking on, the 6th grade honors class. It was your class before you retired. We've gone through 3 different teachers since, and none of them have been able to handle them. The 6th grade honors class. They were notoriously the most challenging group in the school. I had just managed to get them into shape before I left. How did they revert so quickly? Let me think about it, I said, not wanting to commit too quickly. I had just found my own rhythm and did not want to be tied down so soon. As I was leaving the school, I ran into a former colleague, Susan. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. Eleanor, what are you doing here? Daniel told everyone you moved out of state to live with relatives. Susan, I said with a weary smile, I just moved out on my own. On your own? She looked me up and down. Where did you get a place? I bought it a while ago and was renting it out, I explained briefly. I've taken it back for myself now. Susan looked stunned. My goodness, that boy Daniel has been telling everyone you were destitute and homeless. He even organized the teachers at school to go looking for you. My heart sank. What game was Daniel playing now? When I got home, I immediately turned on my phone. I had kept it off for peace and quiet. Sure enough, there were dozens of unread messages and missed calls, mostly from Daniel and his colleagues. The messages were all similar. Mrs. Vance, Daniel is very worried about you. Please call back. Ma'am, Daniel said you might have been scammed. Where are you? Mom, where on earth are you? I've called the police. The latest one was from Daniel, sent half an hour ago. Mom, I found out you have a condo at Sunnyvale Gardens. You've been hiding it from me all this time. I scoffed and did not reply. So what if he found out? It was my property. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole I saw Brenda holding several grocery bags. Figured you hadn't been eating properly, she announced as she came in. I brought your favorites: barbecued ribs, steamed fish, and garlic green beans. I helped her set the table and told her about my visit to the school. When she heard that Daniel was telling everyone I was homeless, Brenda slammed her hand on the table. That ungrateful monster. He's the one who stole your money, and he has the nerve to play the part of the devoted son. Forget it, I said, taking a piece of rib. Let's not talk about him. What's the news about the community college? Classes start next Monday, Brenda said excitedly. 2 calligraphy classes a week. The students are all retired professionals and teachers. It'll be right up your alley. As we were talking, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was the young man from building management. Miss Vance, there's a Mr. Vance downstairs who says he's your son. He's insisting on coming up. What should I do? Brenda and I exchanged a look. Daniel had found me. Let him come up, I said, putting down my chopsticks. I had to face him sooner or later. 5 minutes later, Daniel was standing at my door, panting. His suit was wrinkled, his hair was a mess, and his eyes were bloodshot. Mom? He saw Brenda, and his face hardened. So it was you. You convinced my mom to move out. Brenda was about to retort, but I raised a hand to stop her. Daniel, if you have something to say it. Mom? He suddenly dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. The money. I'll pay it back. Please just come home. I watched his over-the-top performance, my heart as still as water. He had done the same thing at the courthouse, kneeling and apologizing, only to turn on me the moment he got up. The money will be handled according to the legal agreement, I said calmly. As for coming home, this is my home. Daniel looked around the apartment, a flash of greed in his eyes. Mom, when did you buy this place? Why didn't you ever tell me? Tell you? So you could find a way to cheat me out of this too? Brenda sneered. Brenda. Daniel, shut up. This is our family business. It's none of your concern. That's enough. I slammed my hand on the table. Daniel, you are not welcome here. Please leave. Mom, he looked at me in disbelief. You're kicking out your own son for an outsider? Brenda is not an outsider, I said, looking him straight in the eye. And you, Daniel, you have disappointed me more than I can say. His face twisted into a mask of rage. Fine. Great. You think you're so special with this stupid little condo. You just wait. He slammed the door on his way out. The loud bang echoed down the hallway, making my heart tremble. "Don't listen to him," Brenda said, patting my hand. "He's not worth your tears." I shook my head, fighting to hold back the tears. No matter what, he was still the child I had raised. The next morning, I received a call from Principal Evans. "Mrs. Vance, there's been an incident. Daniel came to the school this morning and caused a huge scene. He said you were mentally unstable and demanded that the school not hire you." I felt like I had been struck by lightning. Daniel would go this far. "Mr. Evans, Don't worry," he interrupted. "We all know what kind of person you are. But for safety's sake, it's probably best if you stay away from the school for a while." After hanging up, I sat on the sofa, a chill spreading through me. Daniel was trying to cut off all my paths. Brenda rushed over as soon as she heard. "That animal," she seethed. "I'm calling a lawyer right now to sue him for defamation." "Wait," I said, a thought suddenly occurring to me. "Brenda, why do you think Daniel is so afraid of me going back to work?" "Because he's afraid of you being financially independent and no longer under his control, of course." I shook my head. "No, it's more than that. He's afraid I'll come into contact with something he doesn't want me to know." A wild theory began to form in my mind. I immediately called my former colleague, Susan. "Susan, can you do me a favor? What exactly did Daniel say about me at the school? And has he been acting strangely there recently?" Susan promised to ask around. After hanging up, I pulled out a small box of Arthur's belongings. It contained his personal effects, which I had never gone through carefully, feeling it was an invasion of his privacy. But now— "Eleanor, what are you looking for?" Brenda asked. "I don't know," I said, carefully opening the box. "I just have a feeling." Inside were Arthur's fountain pen, his pocket watch, a few old coins, and an old photograph. It was a picture of a young Arthur, holding a baby, standing in front of an unfamiliar house. On the back was written, "Ming's first birthday, May 21st, 1986. 1986? Daniel was born in 1987. Who was Ming? My hands began to shake. The baby in the photo had a slight resemblance to Daniel, but the dates were wrong. "Brenda," my voice trembled. "Was Arthur married before he met me?" Brenda's face changed. "Why are you suddenly asking that? Tell me the truth." She sighed heavily. "Arthur did have a short-lived marriage to a woman he knew in college, but it was long before he met you. The woman gave birth and then took off. Arthur raised the child alone until he was 3. Then he met you." I felt the floor drop out from under me. "So, Daniel is not my biological son. He's the son of Arthur's ex-wife. Why did he never tell me?" "He was afraid you'd mind," Brenda explained softly. "And he was afraid Daniel would be hurt. The boy was only 3 when he came into your life. He didn't remember anything. So Arthur made everyone promise to keep it a secret." I collapsed onto the sofa. 30-plus years of memories flashed through my mind. Why Daniel didn't look like me. Why Arthur always seemed to favor him. The phone rang. It was Susan. "Eleanor, I found out something. Daniel has been spending a lot of time in the school's records office, looking through old files, specifically your husband's personnel file from back in the day." A jolt went through me. What was Daniel looking for? Could it be that he knew, too? The morning sun filtered through the curtains. I opened my eyes, momentarily confused about where I was. After learning the truth about Daniel's parentage last night, I had tossed and turned, only managing to fall asleep in the early hours of the morning. The photograph on my nightstand was still there. Arthur, holding the infant named Ming, smiling brightly. 1986. He didn't even know me then. That child was now my son, Daniel. I picked up my phone. There were 3 missed calls, all from Susan. There was also a text message. "Eleanor, call me back as soon as possible. Important discovery." "Susan," I said as I immediately called back. "Eleanor." Her voice was urgent. "I found it. Daniel has been in frequent contact with a woman named Veronica Thorne. She's in her late 50s. They say she's his biological mother." My fingers went numb, and the phone almost slipped from my hand. Daniel's biological mother, the ex-wife who had abandoned him. "And there's something else?" Susan continued. Daniel was looking for records in the school archives related to a loan project your husband managed back then. It seems to have some connection to that woman. A loan project. My husband had been the head of the credit department at a bank. He handled countless projects. Why was Daniel suddenly interested in this one? Susan, can you find out which project it was? I'll try, but no promises. By the way, your husband's old assistant, Mr. Lewis, is still at the bank. Maybe you should ask him? After hanging up, I immediately found Mr. Lewis's number in my contacts. He had been Arthur's most trusted subordinate, and we still kept in touch occasionally after he retired. Mrs. Vance, Mr. Lewis said, surprised to hear from me. It's been a long time. After a few pleasantries, I got straight to the point. Mr. Lewis, I need to look into a loan project Arthur handled around 1986. It might be connected to a woman named Veronica Thorne. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Mrs. Vance, why are you asking about this now? Someone else is looking into it. I need to know the truth. Mr. Lewis sighed heavily. Veronica was Arthur's ex-wife. In '86, she came back with the child, claiming her business had failed and she was in debt to loan sharks. Arthur had a soft heart. He broke regulations to approve a loan for her. The whole thing was discovered later, and he nearly lost his job. My heart pounded. So, Arthur had risked his career for his ex-wife and child. What happened to the loan? Veronica took the money and disappeared. The loan became a bad debt. Arthur paid back most of it himself. The rest was written off by the bank. Mr. Lewis paused. Mrs. Vance, this is something Arthur always felt deeply guilty about. He felt he had wronged you. After hanging up, I sat by the window, my thoughts in a whirlwind. Arthur had never told me about this. Was it because he was afraid I would be angry? Or because he could never truly let go of his ex-wife? The doorbell rang. It was Brenda, holding a file folder. Eleanor, I got the information on Veronica Thorne. Inside the folder was a background check. Veronica Thorne, 58, currently the CFO of an investment firm. Divorced, no children. Wait, no children? Then who was Daniel? Here, Brenda pointed to a small line of text. Married Arthur Vance in 1983, divorced in 1986. During the marriage, they adopted a boy named Daniel Vance. Custody was granted to Arthur Vance after the divorce. Adopted. Daniel wasn't Veronica's biological son either. Then who were his real parents? Brenda, my voice trembled. Help me find out the truth about Daniel's birth. That afternoon, I went to the community college for my first calligraphy class as scheduled. The classroom was filled with about 20 silver-haired students, all looking vibrant and energetic. They applauded warmly when I walked in. Hello, everyone, I said, standing at the front, trying to focus. Today we'll be learning the basic strokes of standard script. The 2-hour class passed quickly. Afterwards, the students surrounded me with questions, some even showing me their work for critique. This feeling of being respected and needed allowed me to temporarily forget the morning's shocking revelations. After class, the dean asked to speak with me. Mrs. Vance, I hear you were a star teacher at Lincoln Elementary. Would you be interested in teaching a classical literature appreciation course here as well? I gladly accepted. My retirement was suddenly becoming fuller than I had ever expected. When I got home, Brenda was waiting for me at the door, her face grim. Eleanor, I found it. Daniel was adopted from the city orphanage. His biological parents are unknown. I let out a long breath, not knowing if it was relief or disappointment. At least he wasn't Arthur's child with his ex-wife. But there's something more alarming. Brenda lowered her voice. Veronica has been contacting Daniel frequently. It seems they're planning something. Just then, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello, is this Eleanor Vance? A woman's voice, cold and arrogant, asked. This is Veronica Thorne, Daniel's mother. We need to talk. I gripped the phone. About what? About the inheritance my son deserves, she said, enunciating each word. Arthur Vance left behind more than just that little trust fund. Brenda was gesturing wildly for me to hang up, but on some strange impulse, I agreed. Fine. When and where? Tomorrow, 10 o'clock in the morning. The coffee shop at the Grand Hotel. She paused. And, don't bring that Brenda friend of yours. Otherwise, the deal is off. After hanging up, Brenda was frantic. Eleanor, this is obviously a trap. I know, I said calmly, but I need to know what she wants. The next day, I went to the Grand Hotel alone. In a corner of the coffee shop, a well-dressed, middle-aged woman waved me over. She was impeccably maintained, with sharp features and a certain resemblance to Daniel in her eyes. Mrs. Vance, she said with a fake smile, I've heard so much about you. I cut to the chase. You said Arthur left something else behind. What is it? What's the rush? She said, slowly stirring her coffee. Let's talk about my son first. Do you know why he's been so cruel to you? My heart tightened. Why? Because he's known since he was a child that he wasn't your biological son, Veronica sneered. Arthur, that hypocrite, pretended to treat him equally, but he was always guarding against him. As for you, you only have eyes for your own biological child, don't you? I was thunderstruck. I don't have any other children. Don't play dumb, she raised an eyebrow. Arthur told me. You had a daughter the second year you were married, but you gave her away. I trembled. This was utterly preposterous. Arthur and I never had children. Miss Thorne, I said, forcing myself to remain calm. What do you want? She took a document from her purse. This is proof of Arthur's illegal loan approval back in the day. If this gets out, his reputation will be ruined, even in death. I want you to drop your claim to the $500,000 trust fund. In exchange, I'll keep this secret. I took the document. It did have Arthur's signature and the bank's official seal, dated March 1986. We weren't married yet. This doesn't threaten me, I said, pushing the document back to her. Arthur has been gone for years. I don't care about this. What about Daniel, then? She sneered. If he knew you cared more about money than his father's reputation. Miss Thorne, I stood up. Daniel is a grown man. He has the right to know the truth. As for the money, the court has already ruled. It's out of my hands. Her face changed. Eleanor Vance, you'll regret this. Leaving the hotel, I stood in the sunlight, feeling a deep chill. Veronica's appearance had solved some mysteries why Daniel hated me, why he was so obsessed with the money. But this lie about a daughter, where did that come from? When I returned home, I found someone waiting at my door. Daniel. He was dressed in a suit, his expression dark, a file folder in his hand. Mom, his voice was ice. We need to talk. I stood in the doorway, not immediately letting him in. Our last encounter was still fresh in my mind, and the threats from his mother, Veronica, made me even more wary. Whatever you have to say, you can say it here, I said, keeping my distance. Daniel let out a cold laugh and held up the file folder. Mom, do you know why Dad was always so distant with me? Because he had a dark secret. My heart seized. Another secret about my husband. Veronica had just threatened me, and now Daniel was here. What secret? He embezzled money, Daniel said through gritted teeth. In 1986, he approved a fraudulent loan for a relative. A huge amount. If the bank hadn't shown him mercy for his years of service, he would have gone to prison. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. It was the same story Veronica had told. Daniel, I said calmly, I know about that. The loan was for your birth mother, Veronica. Arthur paid most of it back himself. His face twisted. You knew? Then why didn't you tell me? Tell you what? That your father nearly lost his job to save your mother? That he lived with guilt for all those years? Lies! He suddenly shouted. Dad never loved me. He was always guarding against me, afraid I would steal the inheritance meant for his real daughter. I felt like I had been struck by lightning. This lie about a daughter, again. Daniel, your father and I never had any other children. That is a lie Veronica made up. Is it? He sneered, pulling a piece of paper from the folder. Then what's this? It was a copy of a birth certificate. Name: Claire Vance. Sex: female. Date of birth: May 15th, 1980. 8. Father: Arthur Vance. Mother: Eleanor Vance. My hands began to shake violently. The certificate looked so real, the seal, the signatures, everything. But Arthur and I never had a child. This is a forgery. My voice trembled. Mom, stop pretending, Daniel said, his eyes welling with tears. I've been searching for years, and I finally found proof. Dad left everything good for this Claire, while I'm just an adopted son, unworthy of his inheritance. I looked at his hysterical face, my heart breaking. The child I had raised for over 30 years had been completely blinded by such a ridiculous lie. Daniel, I said, fighting back tears. Look at me. In all these years, have I ever mistreated you in any way? When you were sick, who stayed up all night? When you started school, who drove you back and forth, rain or shine? When you got married, who gave you their life savings? He hesitated for a moment, but his expression quickly hardened again. That's because you didn't know Claire existed. If you had, would you still have been so good to me? I shook my head, too weary to argue anymore. Some people would rather believe a carefully crafted lie than face a painful truth. Mom, his tone suddenly softened. If you drop the claim to the $500,000, I'm willing to continue being your son. Or else what? I looked him straight in the eye. Or else I'll expose Dad's scandal and the existence of Claire to everyone. I'll let the whole world know how you two hypocrites treated your adopted son. I looked at his contorted face and suddenly felt a sense of release. The child I once loved with all my heart now stood before me like a cruel stranger. Daniel, I said calmly, go ahead and expose whatever you want. As for the money, I won't give up a single cent. Fine. Great, he said, taking a step back, his face twisted in a snarl. Eleanor Vance, you just wait. You're going to be ruined. With that, he slammed the door and left. I leaned against the wall, my legs weak. The forged birth certificate slipped from my hand and fluttered to the floor. When Brenda rushed over, I was still sitting in the living room in a daze, clutching that absurd piece of paper. This is insane. Brenda fumed after seeing it. I've known you and Arthur forever. I would know if you had a daughter. I'm calling the lawyer right now and suing them for defamation. It's no use, I said with a bitter laugh. You can't reason with crazy people. No, Brenda said firmly. This is forgery of a public document. It's a crime. And I'm going to find out who this Claire is and why she's pretending to be your daughter. The next day, Brenda brought shocking news. She had found a woman named Claire Vance living in the city, 34 years old, single, working for a multinational corporation. What was even stranger was that her official records showed she was adopted. The names of the adoptive parents were Arthur Vance and Eleanor Vance. That's impossible, I trembled. I've never adopted a child. Someone obviously falsified the records, Brenda said, her face grim. Eleanor, this is serious. Someone is pulling the strings behind Veronica and Daniel. I suddenly remembered Arthur's words on his deathbed. Eleanor, never put all your eggs in one basket. Daniel is a good son, but people change. At the time, I thought he was just being paranoid. Now, I wondered if he had known something all along. Brenda, my voice shook. Can you look into Arthur's whereabouts in the months before he died? Specifically, did he ever meet with Veronica? That afternoon, I went to the community college as scheduled. The moment I walked into the classroom, I could feel something was wrong. The students were clustered in small groups, whispering. When they saw me, they immediately fell silent, their gazes strange. Is something wrong? I asked the class representative. Mrs. Vance, he hesitated. Someone was handing out flyers at the school entrance today. They said you. Said what about me? That you and your husband abused your adopted son and favored your biological daughter. He handed me a flyer. On it was a picture of me and Arthur with a sensational headline, "The True Face of the Hypocritical Teacher Eleanor Vance." The content was filled with the lies concocted by Daniel and Veronica, and it even included a copy of the forged birth certificate. My hands trembled uncontrollably, and my vision blurred. Daniel had actually done this. For $500,000, he was willing to publicly humiliate the mother who raised him. Mrs. Vance, the representative said with concern, none of us believe this. Should we call the police? Thank you. I'll handle it, I said, forcing myself to remain composed. I taught the class, but my mind was elsewhere. When I got home, I found the same flyers plastered all over my front door. The property manager rushed over. "Miss Vance, a man was just here posting these. We tried to make him leave, but he was cursing at us." "What did he look like?" "In his 30s, wearing a suit. His eyes were a little red." "Daniel. He had come here himself to post these lies about me." Just as I was about to go inside, my phone rang. It was Principal Evans. "Mrs. Vance, we have a problem. Someone posted these rumors about you on the school's official website and social media today. It's causing a lot of trouble. The school board has decided to suspend your mentorship role until this is cleared up." I felt like I had fallen into an icy abyss. Daniel and Veronica were trying to completely destroy my reputation and my life. When Brenda arrived, I was sitting on the sofa, surrounded by the vicious flyers. "Eleanor," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Don't be afraid. I've already contacted the lawyer. This is clear-cut slander and character assassination. They're in deep trouble." "Brenda," my voice was hoarse. "Help me find this Claire. I need to know why she's going along with this lie." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every footstep I heard outside made me jump. Was it Daniel? Was it someone Veronica had sent? At 3 o'clock in the morning, my phone vibrated. It was a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Vance, my name is Claire. I'm so sorry. I've been used. Can we please meet and talk?" I stared at the message, my heart pounding. This daughter I had never met. Who was she really? The morning sun streamed through the curtains. I opened my eyes, unsure for a moment if last night's text message had been a dream. I picked up my phone. The message was still there, sitting quietly in my inbox. After much hesitation, I replied, "Okay, when and where?" The reply came quickly. "Today at noon. 3rd floor reading room of the city's main library. Please come alone." Brenda was vehemently opposed. "This is obviously a trap. What if she's working with Veronica?" "I have to find out," I said, gripping my phone. "I need to know why she's pretending to be my daughter." "Then I'll follow you secretly," Brenda said. "If there's any trouble, call the police immediately." At noon, I arrived at the library alone. The 3rd floor reading room was quiet and spacious, with only a few people scattered about. I chose a table by the window and sat down, my heart pounding. "Mrs. Vance," a soft voice said from behind me. I turned to see a woman in her early 30s. She was wearing a simple white shirt and jeans, no makeup. There was a strange familiarity in her features. "I'm Claire," she said quietly, nervously twisting her fingers. "I'm so sorry for all the trouble I've caused you." I motioned for her to sit, studying her unfamiliar face. She did look a little like me when I was young, but she looked much more like Arthur. "Who are you, really?" I asked directly. I am Arthur Vance's daughter," she said, her voice even quieter. "But I'm not yours." I felt like I had been struck by lightning. "What does that mean?" "My mother is Veronica Thorne," she said, looking up, her eyes filled with tears. "I was born in 1988. My father was Arthur Vance. They had already been divorced for 2 years. My mind went blank. So, Arthur and Veronica had kept in touch after their divorce. And had a daughter? Impossible, my voice trembled. Arthur wasn't that kind of man. It's true. She handed me a DNA test report. It was done last week. It confirms with 99.99% certainty that I am Arthur Vance's daughter. I mechanically took the report, my vision blurring. Arthur had betrayed me. He had been with his ex-wife after we were married. "Mrs. Vance," Claire said urgently, "my mother used me. She forged your name on my documents and made me believe I was the child you and my father abandoned. It wasn't until I saw those flyers yesterday that I learned the truth." "What truth?" "That I wasn't abandoned by you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You never even knew I existed. My father raised me in secret, until he died." I felt like I was plunging into an icy void. Arthur had secretly raised his daughter with his ex-wife during our marriage. All those late nights at work, all those business trips, were all to see this child. "How old are you?" My voice was hoarse. 34. Born May 15th, 1988. I quickly did the math. In 1988, Arthur and I had been married for 2 years. That year, He did work late quite often. Mrs. Vance, Claire suddenly knelt before me. I am so sorry. My mother lied and told me you knew about me, but cruelly abandoned me. I've hated you for so many years, only to find out now that you're a victim too. I looked at her sobbing face, a mix of emotions churning inside me. This daughter who had appeared out of nowhere was both the proof of Arthur's betrayal and an innocent victim. Get up, I said softly. Your mother, Veronica, why did she do all this? Money, Claire said with a bitter smile. Her business failed, and she's in debt to loan sharks. She heard my father had left a trust fund and wanted to use Daniel's status as an adopted son to get it. Wait, I suddenly caught a key phrase. You said Daniel's status as an adopted son? Daniel isn't Veronica's biological child? No, Claire shook her head. Daniel was adopted by my father and Veronica in 1983, before they divorced. When they split, my father got custody. I was thunderstruck. So, Daniel was neither Veronica's nor Arthur's biological son. Then his real story. Mrs. Vance. Claire handed me a USB drive. I've collected evidence here. My mother and Daniel forged your adoption records to get the $500,000 trust. Also, Daniel has been looking into a loan project my father handled, something about a large sum of missing money. I took the drive, my fingers trembling. This was far more complicated than I had imagined. Not just a forged birth certificate, but missing millions. Why are you telling me all this? I asked warily. Because I don't want to be used by my mother anymore, Claire said, her eyes tearful. And because you were the one my father truly loved. Before he died, he told me his biggest regret in life was hurting you. A sharp pain pierced my chest. Arthur had been thinking of me at the end. When did he tell you this? The week before he passed, she said softly. He had a high fever and was delirious. He kept calling your name. He said, Eleanor, I'm sorry about Claire. My tears finally broke free. The Claire Arthur had mentioned. I always thought he was just rambling, but he was saying her name. Where is he buried? I suddenly asked. Hillcrest Cemetery. East Section, Row 18, Plot 6, Claire said. I visit him every week. Hillcrest Cemetery. That was not where Arthur and I had planned to be buried. We had chosen plots together at Pine Ridge Memorial Park, on the west side of the city, where we loved to watch the sunset. Mrs. Vance, Claire asked cautiously, can you forgive my father? I didn't answer. 30 years of marriage, built on such a lie. How could I ever forgive? Back home, I plugged the USB drive into my computer. The files were staggering. Not only were there all the forged documents from Veronica and Daniel, but there were also internal files from the loan project Arthur had managed. The amount was $5 million. The borrower was a shell corporation, but the actual beneficiary was Veronica. What was more shocking was that the money had later vanished. The bank's investigation went nowhere, and it was eventually written off as a bad debt. Arthur was suspected of being involved and was nearly indicted, but the case was dropped due to lack of evidence. I collapsed into my chair, my vision blurred. How many more secrets had Arthur been hiding? When Brenda arrived, I had gone through most of the files. Her face was grim after she reviewed them. Eleanor, this is big. $5 million was an astronomical sum in the 80s. Arthur couldn't have done this alone. You mean? Veronica had to have help. Most likely from a high-level executive inside the bank, Brenda said, pointing to a signature on a document. Look, the approval signature is from a Director Evans. He's now the head of the city's banking commission. I gasped. If someone at that level was involved. Brenda, my voice trembled. I need to go to Hillcrest Cemetery. Now? She looked at me concerned. You're in no state. I have to go, I said firmly. There are some things I need to ask Arthur, face to face. That afternoon, Brenda drove me to Hillcrest Cemetery. East Section, Row 18, Plot 6. A simple black granite headstone. It was engraved, Arthur Vance, beloved father. There was no name of the person who placed it, and no mention of him as a husband. I knelt before the grave, my fingers tracing the cold stone. It had been 5 years. This was the first time I had come to see him, and it was under these circumstances. Arthur, I whispered, you owe me an explanation. A breeze rustled the pine trees beside the grave, a whispering sound like his reply. Brenda silently retreated, giving me space. I took out the book of Robert Frost poems we both loved, turning to the dog-eared page with "The Road Not Taken." We had promised that whoever passed first, the other would read this poem at their grave. I never imagined it would be like this. "Arthur," I choked out, "you lied to me for 30 years. But why? Why can't I bring myself to hate you?" The setting sun cast a golden glow on the headstone. I wiped my tears, stood up, and made a decision. "Brenda, help me contact the media. I'm holding a press conference. I'm going to reveal everything." The press conference was set for 3 days later at the downtown media center. In those 3 days, Brenda, Claire, and I compiled all the evidence. The forged birth certificates, the altered records, the missing loan money, and the records of threats from Veronica and Daniel. "Eleanor," Brenda said, looking at me with concern, "are you sure you want to do this? It means making Arthur's past public." "I'm not making his past public," I said calmly. "I'm exposing the crimes of Veronica and Daniel. Arthur has already paid the price for his mistakes." Claire sat quietly in the corner, her expression conflicted. This daughter, who had appeared so suddenly, had been helping us non-stop, even providing copies of Veronica's private ledgers, which clearly detailed how she had colluded with bank insiders to embezzle the $5 million. "Mrs. Vance," she said softly, "my mother called today. She said if I keep helping you, she will disown me." I looked at her eyes, so much like Arthur's, and my heart softened. "You can back out. She is, after all, your mother." "No," Claire said, shaking her head firmly. "My father told me before he died that you have to be an honest person. I can't let her continue to hurt innocent people." On the day of the press conference, the room was packed. Besides the reporters, many of my old colleagues from the banking world were there. Even Director Evans had sent a representative. I stood at the podium in a simple navy blue suit, took a deep breath, and faced the flashing cameras. "Good morning. Thank you all for coming." My voice was steady. "I am here today to expose a case of financial fraud and character assassination that has gone on for over 30 years. Over the next hour, I detailed how Veronica and Daniel had forged documents, altered records, and spread vicious rumors to try to steal the trust fund. When I presented the evidence showing where the $5 million had gone, a gasp went through the room. Director Evans's name was clearly on the key documents. "Finally," my voice cracking, I said, "and I must clear up one final lie. Miss Claire Vance is indeed the daughter of Arthur Vance, but she is not my daughter. She is the child he had with his ex-wife Veronica after their divorce. I only learned of her existence last week." Claire came to the stage and showed the press the DNA report and her real birth certificate. The flashes intensified, and reporters shouted questions. "Mrs. Vance, will you be pressing charges against Veronica and Daniel? Miss Vance, what are your thoughts on your mother's actions? Was Director Evans aware of the $5 million loan?" Immediately after the press conference, Director Evans was taken in for questioning by the authorities. Veronica and Daniel had vanished, and the police issued warrants for their arrest. That night, Daniel appeared at my door. He was gaunt, unshaven, a shadow of his former self. "Mom," he said, kneeling on my doorstep, his voice hoarse. "I was wrong. I was used by Veronica. She's not my real mother." "She never was," I said, standing inside the doorway, looking coldly at the adopted son to whom I had given all my love. "Daniel, you've known your real story for a long time, haven't you?" He flinched, then slowly nodded. "When I was 12, I overheard Dad talking to someone. I found out I was adopted, but Veronica found me and told me my real parents were killed by Dad." I was thunderstruck. Veronica had concocted such a venomous lie. "So you hated Arthur? And you hated me?" He sobbed. "I was blinded by hate. Mom, forgive me. Don't call me Mom." My voice was ice. "The moment you threatened me, we stopped being mother and son." "Mom!" He lunged forward to grab my legs, but I stepped back and closed the door. His cries and pleas continued outside for a long time, then finally faded into silence. A month later, the case was resolved. Veronica was sentenced to 10 years in prison for financial fraud, forgery, and other charges. Daniel, as an accomplice, received a suspended sentence of 3 years with 5 years of probation. Director Evans was removed from his post, and his case was handed over to the Justice Department. Most of the $5 million was recovered and returned to the bank. Claire quit her job and moved to another city to start fresh. She came to say goodbye. "Mrs. Vance," she said, her eyes red, "I'm sorry. For my father and for myself." I patted her hand, saying nothing. This daughter who had stormed into my life had brought so much pain, but had also unraveled years of mystery. "Go visit your father sometimes," I finally said. "He's all alone at Hillcrest." "You don't hate him?" I looked out the window at the setting Sunday. Love and hate are never that simple. The community college reinstated my classes, and Lincoln Elementary rehired me as a consultant. Life seemed to be returning to normal, but I knew some things had changed forever. Brenda helped me reorganize my finances. Of the $500,000 from the trust, Daniel had already paid back $50,000. The rest would be paid in installments. With my other income, my retirement was more than secure. One evening, Brenda said mysteriously, "There's someone who wants to meet you." "Who?" "Professor Miller, the history teacher at the college. He was in your calligraphy class and has been asking about you ever since." She winked. "He's a nice man, a widower for 5 years. Kids are all grown and live out of state." I just smiled and shook my head. "Brenda, at my age?" "What's wrong with 62? She retorted. "Professor Miller is only 65, and he's in great shape. A few of us old friends are getting together for dinner next week. You should come." I didn't say no. She was right. At 62, maybe life was just beginning. That weekend, I went to Pine Ridge Memorial Park alone. It was the place Arthur and I had loved most. As the sun set, the entire pine forest was bathed in a golden light of breathtaking beauty. I spoke to Arthur in my heart. "I forgive you, not because you deserve forgiveness, but because I need to let go." The wind rustled the pine branches, a whispering sound, like his reply. Back home, I took out the Robert Frost collection, turned to The Road Not Taken, and read it softly, over and over. This time, there were no tears. Tomorrow, I would go to Hillcrest Cemetery. I would place a bouquet of white chrysanthemums on Arthur's grave, not as a wife, but as an old friend bidding a final farewell. And then, I would go to Brenda's dinner party and meet this Professor Miller. I am 62 years old, and there is so much good time still ahead of me.